Recovery is a volunteer leadership development movement in which we lift one another up through EcoFaith's practices for awakening leadership to support our communities in taking courageous action for climate and environmental justice. We are increasingly aware of the need for racial justice if we are to facilitate healing for human communities and the whole community of creation. As we prepare to enter into a time of spiritual grounding, I'll offer this word to those who may be new with EcoFaith. Volunteer leaders who have been part of EcoFaith Recovery since its founding in 2009 have come to believe that spiritual practice and relational development, storytelling, and reflection are critical to this recovery work we are engaged in together. We have found that when we do our spiritual and relational work consistently and intentionally, it usually changes the way we do our work and sometimes the nature of the work itself. Through EcoFaith gatherings, we seek to reclaim our God-given call to make a difference and allow the power of God's love to flow more freely through our lives through EcoFaith's 7 practices for awakening leadership. They include access spiritual power, develop relationships, discover our stories, mentor one another, act together, reflect on our actions, and restore balance. They're listed along with other information about EcoFaith at www.ecofaithrecovery.org. I'm now happy to introduce my spouse, Janet, who's in the other room, and Janet's going to read our litany of welcome, which is being shared on the screen.
All right. Let me just get full screen here. Make sure I got it. Okay. Whether this is your first time participating in this gathering or you've been coming for a very long time, we are glad you're here. If you have felt overwhelmed, angry, or afraid in response to news of increasing climate disruptions, escalating environmental injustice, and racial injustices, you are not alone. You have a place among us here. If you have found yourself burned out by one action after another, done for a good cause, you are not alone. You have a place among us here. If you have been seduced into believing that you have no story that is valid, no wisdom to offer, no gifts that matter, no power to make a difference, you are not alone. You have a place among us here. If you have come to believe that you are a victim of political and economic systems rather than an actor within them, you are not alone. You have a place among us here. If you have found that your spiritual practices are not sufficiently rooting you to weather the storms of climate disruptions, environmental justice, racial or other injustices, and public threats, you are not alone. You have a place among us here. As we trust that God can bring us out of isolation and despair into authentic communities willing to act together, our spiritual and relational resources expand. We remember that we can organize with our communities to facilitate the diverse flourishing of life in a world embodying love for all and justice for the dispossessed.
Thanks so much, Janet. So we continue now with EcoFaith's first practice, which is accessing spiritual power, consciously connecting with the indwelling God to rediscover our belovedness, our God-given power, and our place within God's evolving universe. As we seek together to change the world out there, we make space for the God who is present in our leadership development work right now to continue to change the world that is right here. Let's show up to our own unique place within God's evolving universe by taking a few deep breaths together, fully receiving the gift of air available to us in the particular place where we are right now. Let's become aware of our feet on the ground and remember that beneath any flooring is earth. Every molecule in our bodies comes from this earth and her atmosphere. Breathe in the awareness that we are God's beloved creation and earth's power is flowing through us. As we take 2 more breaths within this community of creation right now. We remember that the places we are currently sitting are the traditional homelands of indigenous peoples who first lived here and were forcibly removed. Will anybody who knows the names of the tribes or nations within whose land you live, please unmute yourselves now and say their names. Kalapuye.
Kalapuye.
Multnomah, Clackamas, Bands of the Chinook.
Duwamish.
Cowlitz.
Kalapuya.
May our work this evening honor the ancestors and descendants of these peoples present among us. Let us also remember the human and other than human communities of Earth who have been repeatedly silenced. If you are aware of a human or other than human community which has been silenced or which is currently experiencing disproportionate harm due to public policies leading to climate disruptions, environmental or racial injustice, will you please type them into the chat box now? Any communities, human or other than human, who are experiencing or have experienced disproportionate harm, feel free to type them into the chat box. After you've had a chance to type yours in, if you just take a look at the others that other people are typing in, bring them into your awareness and into our gathering. Now, let's take another breath together as we envision all of those who are named there in the chat, as well as ourselves and the entire Earth community held within the embrace of a God to whom nobody is silent and nobody is invisible. I just want to add that I vision a hope prayer that we're going to help these communities to become more visible as a result of offering ourselves here to this work tonight. As we seek to develop as leaders through whom God brings into being this vision of a world in which all are seen, named, loved, and allowed to flourish, please unmute yourselves now and join me in the EcoFaith version of the Serenity Prayer, inspired by Black author and activist Angela Davis. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we cannot accept, the wisdom
to know the difference.
Thank you. EcoFaith's practice number 2 engages us in developing relationships to consciously awaken the power among that arises when we engage in authentic conversation and relationship. So we'll now pair up with one other person in breakout rooms so that we can take time with the interpersonal Oh, I don't know about you all. I get in the breakout room and I just want to keep talking. It just, it's just so good to get to know somebody else's story, and to be heard in my own as well. So I hope you also either made a new connection or deepened an old one. And I'm about to introduce Scott Shurtleff, who will present an overview of the Green New Deal, followed by questions and action groups. But before I do that, I want to just acknowledge that Scott is one of EcoFaith's volunteer leaders, and the fact that we are all gathered tonight is because of Scott's vision for this gathering, and that Scott has been tracking the importance of the Green New Deal and the importance of us getting organized and mobilized. He's been on this for quite some time now. Everything EcoFaith does is driven by volunteer leaders. We've got I'm blessed to serve as quarter-time pastor organizer. Jenny Lee is quarter-time communications coordinator, but you don't get very far on quarter-time. So it's all volunteer leaders. And tonight is Scott. In fact, the whole revised script that I read tonight was Scott revamping it. So Scott, I just want to say thank you to you for bringing us out tonight, and turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Robin. So I'll take about 18 minutes to share a presentation about that will be an overview of the Green New Deal. And then, as Robin said, we're going to go break into what I'm calling action groups. So we'll go into breakout groups again. And actually, before that, we will have an opportunity for questions. So if you do have questions during the presentations, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll do the best we can to address those questions after we come out of the presentation. So let me go ahead and share my screen. If you could bear with me just a minute, and I find the right thing and present it and all that sort of thing. All right, so we're looking good? All right, thank you. So yeah, I've been working on the Green New Deal for some time, and it is something that really inspires me. It's a vision for the future that I think can really unify us in our work, and we'll learn more about that as we go through the presentation. Before we do that, I'd like to just pass the virtual basket. So as Robin mentioned, EcoFaith Recovery is funded entirely by the contributions of individuals and faith communities. We recognize that many people and organizations are suffering financial hardship, particularly at this time. As part of our eco-justice values, we invite you to consider not only contributing to EcoFaith, but also making matching donations to a frontline community and EcoFaith Recovery. Monthly contributions of any amount are a particularly effective way to expand this important work. Visit ecofaithrecovery.org/give and make a contribution in whatever amount is right for you. Thank you so much. So I'm sure it's not news to anyone here that we are experiencing multiple crises that are very much related. Some of these crises are recent, like the economic crisis that has come out of the pandemic, and some have been here for a very long time, like the racial injustice and the crisis of low-income people and homelessness. I think we've seen over the last year that by having multiple crises, it's not additive, but it is in fact multiplicative, especially to those communities who are already vulnerable. And we've said that these problems are interrelated and connected, and so the solutions must be too. And as we experience these crises, we can each have different reactions to them. We have very real emotions connected to these crises. Each of us may experience it differently. In fact, each of us may experience them differently at different times. And I think it's important that we name our emotions, whether their anxiety, grief, overwhelm, a combination of the above, or something else entirely, and that we deal with those emotions as part of this work. And so where do we go for guidance? Well, one place is we go to the wisdom of our ancient scriptures. Love your neighbor, care for the stranger, care for the earth and be a good steward to her, because we are part of her and she is part of us. And do justice and love kindness, as the prophet Micah tells us. We can also listen to modern day prophets like Greta Thunberg, who says, instead of looking for hope, look for action. Then, and only then, hope will come. And so one place to find action is in the Green New Deal, a vision for a vibrant economy, a healthy planet, a sustainable economy, and a just society. And what is the Green New Deal? Well, I'm sure that many of you are aware that the Green New Deal came out as a resolution from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts as U.S. Congress House Resolution 109. So the Green New Deal is a resolution of the Sunrise Movement, the youth who are driving the Green New Deal. And there are many other organizations who have sprung up across the country. The Oregon Just Transition Alliance, a Green New Deal for the Gulf South. It's nationwide, and in fact, it's worldwide. There's a European Green New Deal. And most importantly, the Green New Deal is really a vision. And so it doesn't really matter whether the House resolution is passed or not. The Green New Deal vision is now part of us. And as I described in the introduction to the advertisement for this session, we see the seeds of policy sprouting now, and we'll talk about the things that we can act on at the end of the presentation. I like to talk about the Green New Deal really with 4 different pillars. A pillar of a healthy climate, a pillar of economic vitality, and then the very important pillars that we must always look through all our work through of justice and equity and human well-being. So we'll take a look at all of these pillars in a little more detail. I won't go into excruciating detail because of the time. But this is what I really love about the Green New Deal, is that there is so much that we can do. There are so many opportunities to plug into the Green New Deal and do the work for the Green New Deal. That there are opportunities for all of us to find our passion within the Green New Deal and work towards that passion. As long as when we're doing that work, like if I say I'm working through a healthy climate, by working for the electrification of vehicles and electric infrastructure, it qualifies to me as Green New Deal work if I view that work through the lens of equity, that everybody has access, through the lens of justice, and that I'm promoting human well-being. So to me, these pillars, these principles, are critical to how we look at Green New Deal work. I skipped ahead. Principle number 1, or pillar number 1, a healthy climate, really comes in a couple of pieces. One of the pieces is that we have our human systems, and we need to transform our systems such that those systems have a much less of a footprint, much less weight on the earth, and that in fact that our systems are aligned, are sustainable within the regenerative processes of the earth. And I think many of us are familiar with the push for 100% clean renewable sources and transforming our transportation system. We've also got to keep in mind agriculture, because agriculture is a big piece of both emissions and also a great opportunity to sequester carbon if we do it right. We also, the second part of it is working with the earth. The earth is a powerful, powerful regenerative engine if we just let her do her work. And so we need to restore the natural environment such that the regenerative processes of the earth are able to work. And in place of, you use the power of the earth, such as our forest here in the Pacific Northwest, to sequester and draw down huge amounts of carbon, so that we not only stop increasing carbon, but we actually begin to draw it down back to 350 parts per million or lower. So working with the environment and remembering the power of the earth and working with her are a key piece towards a healthy climate. Second pillar of the Green New Deal, economic vitality. I'll talk about this from the perspective of investment. We talk about the federal government having a big piece of the Green New Deal, and that's because the federal government has the power of the purse. The federal government, we can print money, and there's a great number of resources available through the through the U.S. Treasury and the federal government, as we saw with the CARES Act, where we can suddenly snap our fingers and have $2 trillion. So federal investment can drive huge amounts of investment and transformation towards renewable power, building resiliency, zero emission vehicles, and on and on and on, and transforming those systems. That needs to be done in partnership with private sector investment across the country. One piece I like to talk about here is really community empowerment and revitalization, because the Green New Deal is really about a national mobilization, and yet community and local level implementation. So because what to do, the people of the communities, we in Oregon, for example, know what to do about our forests. People in rural Oregon know what to do about agriculture if they're given the right incentives. So empowering communities to apply the right solutions that are appropriate to their communities is a vital component of the Green New Deal, and will really drive economic vitality in each of those communities. The justice and equity lens is just a critical pillar of the Green New Deal. Part of the Green New Deal recognizes the systemic oppression that has gone on for years, hundreds of years here in the United States, and ending and preventing the systemic oppression that people have experienced, such as protecting indigenous people's rights and centering people of color, centering low-income communities, centering indigenous peoples in the decision-making of the policies, and letting them dictate and say what they need, what's right for them. Again, empowering those communities to say what's going to work for them, and give them more than a seat at the table for developing policy, but actually leadership role in defining and implementing policy that will work for them and set things square. It's really important that we have democratic processes that are inclusive and really have participation. I think as we've seen over the past year, to our dismay, we have a lot of work to do to repair our democratic processes and make sure that the processes for the Green New Deal are inclusive at all levels, so that people have a voice and people have a say in what solutions will work for them. And the last pillar of human well-being. One thing that we need to work on is rights instead of privilege. Right now in the United States, a healthy environment is largely a privilege. Housing, a privilege. Healthcare, a privilege. These things need to be rights. We need to have a strong social safety net as part of the Green New Deal that provides everyone with a right to their basic needs, including housing, healthcare, education, and affordable food. A right to economic security where people have living wage jobs and benefits so that families can support themselves on one or 1.5 jobs, not 2, 3, and 4, and that everybody has safe and healthy workplaces. And we need to make sure that we know that through this transition that there are going to be displaced workers, so that we need to make sure that there is a just transition for workers. I read a recent article about the Keystone Pipeline and written by the opposition, basically, well, the Keystone Pipeline has been canceled. Here come the job losses. There's the perfect example of where we can step in with jobs for pipeline workers. There are plenty of jobs to be done in the public sector, in repairing water infrastructure that people can be put to work on, as long as we make those jobs available to those people through public investment. So I know that can feel big. Whoa, that's a lot, all of that. I hope I haven't put you back in overwhelm. But the thing is, we just need to do our part. And we'll talk a little bit about things that policy that we can look at now. This slide shows some policy that is in place, it is currently in process at the federal, state, and local levels. At the federal level, Merkley has introduced the Climate Smart Ports Act of 2021, something interesting to look at, and where he proposes changing, really overhauling our ports to make them, to substantially reduce the emissions of those ports and make them much more efficient. Blumenauer, Ocasio-Cortez, and Senator Sanders have introduced the National Climate Emergency Act that would declare climate as a national emergency and give the executive branch power to take action, make substantial investment through the power of an emergency act. Something else to look at and support. Enbridge Line 3 is something that 350 PDX is currently has a campaign about, and stopping the construction of Enbridge Line 3 is just critical. It's not just a replacement pipeline. It's a new and bigger pipeline that's bringing the dirtiest oil on the earth across indigenous lands in Minnesota. And I encourage you to look at what the Genu Collective is doing there and support them. In the state, we have lots of great things going on. As Michael, I think, mentioned, we have the Oregon Clean Energy Opportunity Act that has 3 bills in it: the Energy Affordability, House Bill 2475, Healthy Homes, House Bill 2842, and 100% Clean Energy for All, House Bill 2995. And all of those bills are being led by a coalition that the Oregon Just Transition Alliance is part of, all part of an Oregon Green New Deal. And 350 PDX also has a big campaign as part of that coalition. EcoFaith Recovery will be joining that coalition as well. Beyond Toxics has a piece of legislation for equity and climate in land use, House Bill 2488. And there's also an additional bill that the governor has introduced, an omnibus transportation electrification bill to build electric infrastructure across the state with particular emphasis on low income and rural communities, House Bill 2165. At the local level, we're all, I think most of us, familiar with the Portland Clean Energy Fund that EcoFaith Recovery and others were part of a coalition to pass back in 2018 and is currently being implemented. I know Michael Heumann was part of creating the grant through MACG for some funds out of the Portland Clean Energy Fund, and grants are being evaluated now to bring the benefits of the Portland Clean Energy Fund to the city of Portland and low-income communities and people of color. A couple of other things to keep in mind are the Portland Clean Air Initiative and the Urban Tree Canopy. And then there's simply just community building to be done at the local level. And I placed arrows and placed in bold 3 of them because these are the 3 that we'll have breakout groups about. House Bill 2995, 100% clean energy for all. House Bill 24, and Michael Heumann will be facilitating that breakout group. House Bill 2488 is Vern Johnson will be facilitating that breakout group about equity and climate in land use. And finally, Reverend Janet Parker will be facilitating our community building, or our Kairos call to action, which is really about community building through communities of faith. So we'll all have opportunities to choose the breakout group of our choice to participate in brainstorming and learning further about these actions. So at the end of this, the Green New Deal is big. There's a lot to be done. It can feel overwhelming. Just do your part. And I think that the EcoFaith seven practices for awakening leadership are really valuable in this. Build relationships, do this in community so that you're not acting alone, but act together. Work to organize your community. Find, develop, and share your story. Sure, our personal stories are powerful, and our personal stories are a way to reach others. We did a workshop back last year on the power of storytelling, and it is available as a recording on through EcoFaith. So you're welcome to access our storytelling workshop and practices to learn one technique for telling your story. Seek mentors and mentor each other. And finally, it's okay to take time for yourself and care for yourself and restore balance, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. So I'll stop there with the presentation and invite questions. I have not been watching the chat, so I'll see if anything's there. I don't see any questions in the chat, so happy to invite questions.
I've got a question. Is there a time frame for moving forward, either on the state level or on the national level? If there's a bill, is there a time frame?
So I think there are a number of time frames. The Green New Deal called for a 10-year mobilization, right? So it's putting the work to get all the initiatives started over a 10-year time frame, and called for a 10-year investment. The policies that we're looking at have various time frames, but all of these things in the Oregon legislature are up to be passed this year. So I hope that helps to answer your questions. I think we need to think of the Green New Deal work as long-term work, and this is work that's going to last for many, many, many years. Harriet, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Scott. Very comprehensive. Those 4 pillars really help me to get this very complicated plan. And given how complex it is and all these different levels, how do you recommend people begin to step into that action piece? How do we make something that is so complex, actionable, and inspire others? Like Greta said, it's not hope we're looking for, it's action. Where do we start? Where do we invite other people to start?
Well, I would say, thank you, Harriet. I think it begins with personal story. Personal story is so powerful. And so our personal story will speak to our values and connect to the other person in terms of really values. What do we value, whether it's protecting the future generations and having a healthy earth for future generations, or protecting the forest and the trees, whatever those values are. And then giving through the story, talking about what we're doing, and invite people into that. Invite people to find their passion. Again, there's so many things that can be done in the Green New Deal, and invite them into that, particularly through community. So invite them to become a part of 350, or invite them to become part of EcoFaith Recovery, so that we're doing things in community instead of in isolation. Other questions or thoughts? Robin.
At times I hear politicians talking about promoting pieces of legislation that appear to be part of the Green New Deal, but they aren't talking about the Green New Deal. Obviously, you can take hits from the Green New Deal is obviously a political perspective, and people are going to try to strike it down who don't agree with that. So I'm trying to get my head around. So that it's the Green New Deal, really. It's the vision through which we reclaim a more healthy and just vision of who we can be as human beings within the midst of this earth community. And it's helpful for those of us who want to grasp the big vision of what's happening. But on a political level, a lot of what's going to happen is, oh no, we're going for 100% renewable energy, but it's not going to be framed as part of the Green New Deal. Am I right? Am I thinking about that correctly, Scott? That the Green New Deal is for those of us who are trying to get our head around the vision of where we really need to go and how we recover from a false story to a more regenerative and just story.
I think there's two. Yes, Robin, thank you for that question. I think there are a couple pieces going on here. First, the Green New Deal is a big, all-encompassing vision. And so, yes, the Green New Deal is going to be accomplished through many, 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 many pieces of policy and legislation. No single piece of legislation, or not even a handful of legislation will accomplish the Green New Deal, but many pieces of legislation at all levels of government. So at the federal level, at the state level, at the county level, at the city level, all of it. And I think it's all of that. Yes, those we need to look at the policies and make sure they conform to the Green New Deal, because there are false policies out there that look to be climate, but they're the same old thing in terms of wealth accumulation and actually drive us towards climate apartheid instead of climate a just solution out of it. And so I think that that's the power of the principles of the Green New Deal, is that it gives us a way to evaluate the policies that are being proposed and saying, yes, that one fits, that one doesn't, because it puts, take for example, that one protects the rich town of Malibu and sacrifices Long Beach, where there's a great deal of poverty. So there can't be any sacrifice zones out of this, right? And so, yeah. The other piece, unfortunately, and to be honest, the term Green New Deal has become highly politicized and is a lightning rod. So it's not an accident that the Oregon Clean Energy Opportunity Campaign is called that. And it's not called the Oregon Green New Deal. It's not an accident. It's very smart, so that you get people in rural Oregon to listen to it instead of saying no. So I think those are the two things that are going on.
That's super helpful.
Okay.
I know we need to move into our breakout groups. Thank you, Scott.
We
What a
need to
great
move into breakout
presentation.
groups.
So I think you wanted people to rename themselves?
Yes.
Okay.
I was supposed to invite people into that. So if we could take I did not give Jenny Lee an opportunity, so my error. We're supposed to rename ourselves to which breakout group you'd like to go to.
You'll see the message from
So
Jenny Lee in the
there
chat.
I
If you
am,
could
and
put in front of your name the number 1, the number 2, or the number 3, based on which of those conversation groups you might like to go to, conversation/action groups that you might like to go to. Scott, is there anything else you want to say, or do any of the breakout group facilitators want to say anything else about what you're focusing on there for people who are still choosing?
I would just say that we are thinking about sharing the contact information for the facilitators in case you want to contact someone that led a breakout group that that you weren't able to attend, since you can only go to one of them, so that you can have an opportunity to talk with somebody about a different topic should you wish to do that.
Great.
Okay, so it looks like Jenny Lee, how are you doing?
Just need Phyllis and Robin.
Oh.
And if you unmute yourself, Phyllis, I'll just assign you once you let me know. Or you can type it in the chat.
Yeah,
too.
anyone can verbally say which group you'd like to go to, if that's easier for you to do it verbally than to rename yourself. Can you assign everyone, Jenny Lee, and then I'll just see. I'm going to go to whatever group needs more conversation partners.
Okay.
And if it's pretty equally distributed, then I'll go to group 1.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we have 20 minutes, I believe.
See you back in 20 minutes, everybody. Make sure to introduce yourselves to your group members.
All right, thank you, everyone. I hope your breakout groups, your action groups were inspiring and motivating. Just like to offer a few minutes for anybody to share something meaningful, something you might feel called to do, or something you learned during your breakout group that you'd like to share with the rest of us.
I'll share. Vern lifted up a particular bill, House Bill 2488. I think is that right, Vern? And we need complete overhauling of our land use in order to bring in both the equity piece and the climate piece, because our land use laws were not written with any awareness of sequestration. And this particular bill, he lifted up that, at first he was taken aback because it looked like they were looking for only for something to happen by 2026. And when he read into the bill, it actually said by July of 2021, they expect interim rules to be established. So it was a reminder to me that you really do have to look at these bills. They're very detailed, and in those details, there's important stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Harriet. It points out the long-term nature of this work. I think that we are in this for the long run, and at the same time, we need to set interim objectives. Like, so we need to be carbon neutral by 2050. Great, but we need some steps along the way as well. So that we're showing progress towards that, and we have interim goals. So yeah, Michael.
So I just wanted to share with my group. I went back into the bill just now, and I did find an ultimate goal of reaching 100% of renewables is by 2035. But I would say, to your point, Scott, that 100% clean energy is a big step in that direction, because it requires us from the power generation side to get there by 2035. So that, and to do that by 2035, we have to go at a faster rate than we are going now. But one of the things I pointed out to the group is that, unfortunately, this bill 2995 for 100% clean energy has not yet had a hearing. So we don't know yet who the opposition is, though we expect it's going to be the two big players, Portland General Electric and Pacific Power are going to be the main ones. Hi, sweetie. And so, unfortunately, we have as many questions as answers at this point. But I think one of the other points is that this really will be a contributor to the issue of getting us by 2050 well along the way.
Yeah, I agree. And I love that, we selected bills that cover various aspects here. Like we selected one that covered the energy side, and another that covered the land use side. So it just shows the diversity of different things that need to be done and are on the flip side are available to be done. So somebody who feels called to energy can work on 2995, or somebody who's more interested in land use and promoting justice in land use can be working for 2488. So and all important, all contributing to a Green New Deal. Any other observations, Peter?
I just want to thank my group for educating me. I was told that The Soil Will Save Us is my next book that I need to read. And I didn't get a chance to give feedback about that, but I really am very interested in that topic and will read that book. But I've been following and working with a startup nonprofit called Build Soil. And they're using what's called a multi-solving strategy to this issue. So by planting chestnut trees, they're creating, with edible chestnuts, they're creating a food source, carbon sequestration, building soil, and in urban areas, mitigating the heat island effect. So these climate justice areas that we know about that don't have adequate tree cover, it's a way to do multi-solving in those kinds of places. So anyway, thanks for the book recommendation.
Thank you, Peter. Robin, I think time that I turn it over to you for action plan.
Fabulous. Yes, indeed. Wait, too many tabs open. Hold on. There we go. Great. So thank you, Scott, and thank you to Vern and Michael Scott, Janet, for your leadership of helping us get organized of how we can take action so that Green New Deal isn't just a vision, but actually gets implemented in the world step by step. And like you said, Scott, what's our piece of that to do? Knowing that leadership is most effective when we are accountable, welcome all of us, me too, to take a few minutes to create our action plans and some next steps. I don't know about you, but I've gone to a lot of awesome Zoom gatherings during this pandemic in the last years. I've heard a lot of awesome things, and I have not acted on everything. And usually the thing that makes the difference in terms of whether I act or not is whether I get a plan down somewhere and into my calendar. So I welcome you, if you're open to it, to take out a journal or calendar and consider, what could each of us do? What could you do in the next 2 weeks that would advance any of the possibilities you are feeling called to as a result of this meeting? When will you take those steps? What support do you need, and from whom? And I welcome you to bring your spirituality into this. Janet and I were listening to a show about meditation, and it talked about the power of a question. Sometimes we can just ask the question of ourselves, and it said there's a power in saying, what do you want to do? But ask the question to ourselves and see what emerges. So we'll take 4 minutes to listen and to write down an action plan, put it on the calendar, whatever those steps are, so that we can know it actually has a chance of happening. Choose just 1 or 2 key things that you intend to do by a specific date. And when you are ready, write 1 or 2 of those into the chat box, as well as your calendar, so that we can try to be mutually accountable to one another. We know there's also a power for the brain in writing something down, right? We're more likely to do it. If you want someone to serve as a mentor, a collaborator, or an accountability buddy, then feel free to use the chat function and send a message to that specific person. And then I'll start reading your public intentions from the chat in just a few minutes. So feel free to take just a few minutes to do that now. Okay, feel free to keep adding things. I'm going to read some of what's there. I put into the chat a link where you can learn more and sign up to sound the alarm for climate justice on March 11th at 11 a.m. with your community of faith, either in person or on Zoom. And to send Jenny Lee, or there's an upload link to give her an 8 to 10 second video of that, which is going to be pasted together with videos of other communities of faith. This particularly relates to everything Scott's talked about. In particular, in Oregon, we're using that as kind of a big kickoff for the organizing around the 100% renewable energy for all, in partnership with Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, that is organizing Oregon as part of a larger green faith initiative. So if you aren't aware of that, I really encourage you to check that out and to consider organizing your community. Jenny Lee says she wants to help to support this March the 11th Sound the Alarm action in support of 100% clean energy for all. Thank you for that, Jenny Lee. We wouldn't be doing it if it weren't for your technological support on that. Michael says, prepare and submit written testimony in support of the various climate bills being considered in the legislature and give oral testimony when possible. Vern says, by February 26th, contact my state representative and state senator and tell my story of why I support the bill for which I am advocating. Thanks, Vern. Scott, personally review the Kairos Call to Action. Have conversations about the Kairos Call to Action with 3 Waverly United Church of Christ congregants by March 15th. And Harriet says, 1, research the forest bill hearing coming up February 23rd and write up supportive testimony, and research HB 2488 and attend hearing and sending written testimony. Thank you, Harriet. Carl says, we will continue with our community carbon project. Yay! The next step depends on whether it was planned to be done already. Yeah, I hear you. We will amend the barren soil that existed under black plastic and plant native plants with the goal of rebuilding the soil and sequestering carbon. That's wonderful, Carl. Thank you. And there is more information about EcoFaith's Community Carbon Initiative on the EcoFaith website for those who want to learn more about the initiative Carl's got his community engaged with. For any of these actions that you want to help organize your community around, we have a Thursday morning gathering. Scott talked about the first Thursday of March. You are welcome to attend, and actually we meet every first Thursday to focus on things related to Oregon. So if you're an Oregon person, you can come any Thursday. Then first Thursday of March particularly will focus upon some of these things related to Green New Deal next steps, if you want to specifically focus on that. But there's an RSVP link, and I'm going to help organize more people to turn out to that. Peter, 1 book to read and 2 films to watch over the next few weeks. Immediate steps. 1, check out OLIS for HB 2488 and track the bill so I know when the hearing is scheduled. Great. Email Representative Maxine Dexter to thank her for sponsoring HB 2488, and email Senator Ginny Burdock asking her to co-sponsor HB 2488. Emails will be story and faith-based. Thank you, Peter. Mark will reread Laudato Si and develop presentation noting the similarities to the Green New Deal. Wow, Mark, let Jenny Lee know about that if you're open to the EcoFaith community coming to your presentation. That sounds fabulous. I'd like to come. Janet will reach out to the facilitator of the UCC Council for Environmental Justice, which put out the Kairos Call to Action, and talk with him about who she should be connecting with from the council within her regional UCC conference here to help promote the Kairos Call to Action, and then make sure that person knows about EcoFaith Recovery and invite them to the Thursday morning leaders meetings. Oh, and she's going to have me be an accountability partner. All right, sounds good. Carl also wants to learn the status of the Portland Clean Energy Fund to see what help they may need. Awesome. Jan, by 3-4, educate myself so that I will be more able to converse with opponents to the Green New Deal. Awesome. So research the enumerated bills and summarize talking points for herself. A sort of elevator speech that I cannot deliver at this point. That's great. And there's some great resources on the EcoFaith website of connecting with the Marshall Gantz model of storytelling, which Jenny Lee was referring to as well. Phyllis, put planning for Earth Day, incorporating the Kairos moment theme as an addition to our Social Justice Coalition agenda on February 28th. Awesome. Or I'm assuming that's for Central Lutheran. Fabulous. And Jan, by 3-4, will educate herself so that she will be more able to converse. Wait, that's the same one. Okay, sorry. Harriet, invite you all February 28th to Havara Shalom Forest Forum, 4 to 6 p.m. Register. There's the link at Havara Shalom. Thank you so much. Janet and I are really excited to attend that, and thank you for inviting us. Cheryl, organized some testimony for HB 2488 and encourage my regenerative gardening project group to participate. That is fabulous. So EcoFaith exists to as a mutual support, leadership development community where we support one another in organizing our communities, whether they are our faith communities or other communities, to take public action in support of this vision of a just and regenerative world for all, very much like the Green New Deal vision. So you are welcome to any EcoFaith gathering, and particularly to those weekly Thursday morning gatherings too. So thank you for those, friends. I'm super excited. I felt energized just reading those out loud. I felt my energy going up as I was reading them. So practice number 7 of EcoFaith 7 practices is to restore balance. It's the goal of all of the practices and all our actions. It is the means by which we consciously realign our lives with the sacred and natural rhythms of life expressed through the whole of God's creation. As we go forth from this gathering, may we always remember that we are not alone and that it is not all up to us. We are called to be faithful, regardless of whether we are successful. We are indeed one small but miraculous part of God's evolving universe. I welcome you to please type an intention into the chat box as to how you will work to restore balance during the coming week. And perhaps the things you've already typed in there are exactly that. That's maybe what you most need to restore balance. We think of restoring balance at the personal level and the interpersonal level and the community level and the public arena. So you can choose any one of those. Maybe you could choose the one you tend to neglect the most, whether it's personal, interpersonal, community, or public arena. And feel free to type an intention into the chat as to how you would like to really focus on this culminating practice of restoring balance. And we'll move towards closing. After you've typed your own, feel free to look at others. I always enjoy reading ones of others. I'm like, oh yeah, I need that too. Like, oh yeah, Mark, poetry, especially Wendell Berry, that would be good for me too. It's just a wonderful way that we lift up the importance of living into the balance that we are seeking to work for the whole of God's creation. So we hope to see many of you at our next Metro Portland cohort meeting on Thursday, March 4th at 8:45, or even in advance of that, any Thursday at 8:45. We'll stay on the Zoom call for a few more minutes for those who have further questions or thoughts. Thank you so much for participating with EcoFaith Recovery today. And I know I'm going to hold you all in my prayers this evening in my quiet time for the intentions you have typed here, to just lift all of that up in prayer, that we may have what we need to do what we're setting out to do, or that God may let us know if our intentions need to be directed. Thank you, everybody. Thank you especially to Scott. Give it up for Scott and the vision for the Green New Deal gathering. Scott, thank you for making this possible for all of us.